Good morning, everybody. As promised, chapters 3 and 4 of Miracles Boys. So, good readers, before you start reading, you've put down your book, you've read chapter 1, you've read chapter 2, you're getting ready to read chapter 3. Don't jump right back in. You take a moment and refresh your brain, just like clicking the refresh button on the internet screen where it takes everything down and then brings it back up again. That's what we do before we start reading again. And for those of us that read and take notes, the best way to do that is to read over your notes before you jump into chapter 3. So we're going to take a look at these notes that I've got modeled to the right, and we're going to look over those notes and think about what we've read, and then we're going to jump into chapter 3. So chapter 1, and the beginning, we've got a first-person point of view. The narrator is Lafayette. This is so important because the author of the book has brought us into the book. First-person point of view makes us a part of the movie. We are seeing things like the main character is seeing things. It makes it so much more personal. So Lafayette is a boy. His brother calls him Lala and a Milagro killer and made Lafayette cry. The brothers doing most of the talking. They're in their bedroom. New Charlie, meaningless. Charlie's been to Rahway, which is a home for boys who've gotten in trouble. New Charlie has a friend, Aaron, who is very mean. Tyree's the oldest brother. He's a nice guy. He has intervened with Aaron and made him stop doing bad things. Mom. The mom is past tense. She's passed away. We also know that the dad's passed away. And here we have in the past old Charlie who loved animals and prayed for them. I got praise. Let me change this to parade. Who prayed for them. He took Lafayette to the movies. He was a good big brother. In the present, new Charlie. I'm going to add some notes here. Good students add notes when they read over their notes. Charlie is mean. He makes L cry. And I'm just going to put L for Lafayette. We don't have to be detailed. This is for us. This isn't to turn in. This isn't to be published. All right, Lafayette has a good heart. He feels weird about the audience laughing at how the Chinese person is talking. So we know that Lafayette has a big heart, that he's sensitive. He cried when Charlie was mean to him. We know Charlie has moved from being a caring, sensitive older brother to a mean, insensitive older brother. Now in chapter 2 we start in Central Park. Well, that clue tells us that it's in New York City. It's the wintertime before Lafayette was born, so it's in the past. They refer to Dad as was. He passed away of hypothermia. We notice that the author used repetition to build suspense, how he slowed the action in and zoomed in on what was going to happen. Now, we're starting to keep track of what happened in the past and what's happening in the present of the story. This story likes to bounce between the past and the present, which can be confusing for an audience if you're not really paying attention. So we want to make sure we really pay attention to when things are happening. We also learned in chapter 2 that Milagro meant miracle. That was Mom's name, that she's from Beaumont, Puerto Rico. Okay, so now we're starting in chapter 3. So we're going to start with our subtitle, chapter 3. I'm going to make this a bulleted list, so I'm going to give us some bullets here. And there will be different questions when you guys get to this piece because I'm recording it before I alter the text just a little bit. Some of the things should be your thoughts. So as you begin, do you know anyone who has a big goal but isn't taking any steps to achieve the goal? Oh my goodness. Automatically I'm making a connection to myself. I go very much back and forth between my health goals. Some day I'm all lemon water and grilled chicken, and other days I'm like a Big Mac with cheese and a soda pop. And so that right away makes me think of myself. Sometimes I take some steps forward. Sometimes I take some step back. I do know lots of people that have goals and talk about them, but definitely do nothing to work towards them. All right, chapter 3. After is a transition word. We know we are moving from one idea to the next. After knew Charlie and Aaron left. Well, I have this clue knew Charlie, and the clue knew Charlie tells me we're in the present. So we're in the apartment. Knew Charlie and Aaron have left, so the main characters by themselves. I went into the living room and turned on the television. On Friday nights, Tyree let me watch as much TV as I wanted, as long as I took one weekend day for homework. That's fair. I usually chose Sunday, usually starting in the late afternoon or the minute Tyree started getting after me, whichever came first. Character's very relatable. I flipped through the channels for a while and then sat back against the couch and watched music videos. I couldn't really tell one from the other. Most of them had some guy standing there rapping and a lot of pretty girls dancing around him. Or the guy was driving a fancy car with pretty girls in it. Once in a while the guy would be in a swimming pool with pretty girls. That was the one on now. The guy with a lot of rings on his fingers rapping to some pretty girls in bikinis. Knew Charlie liked listening to music and said he was going to be a rapper. Aaron said he was going to be one too. Either that or a car salesman. I guess he figured he'd sell cars to rappers who would fill them with pretty girls. Thing about rapping though, knew Charlie said, is you gotta do it now. Most rappers weren't much older than him. Sometimes he and Aaron sat in our room all day, making up rhymes and slapping each other 5 when something came off sounding right. But I hadn't seen them taking any real steps, like making some tapes and calling up a radio station to ask for a few minutes on the air. That takes me back to our introduction poll question. Do you know anyone that has goals that doesn't really work towards those goals? So I should be making that connection right about now. So Aaron and New Charlie say they want to be rappers. Now, wannabe is not a word, but these are notes for myself, so I can do that in notes to myself. If I were making these notes for something published, something final, I would want to make corrections. Okay, I'm starting here at the top. I turned the volume down low. The apartment felt big and quiet with nobody in it. It's not that big. Just 4 rooms, me and New Charlie's room, then Tyree's room right next to us. His room used to be Mama's. Then there's a long hallway leading to one big room that's both the living room and the dining room. If you go right, there's a dining room table and chairs. If you go left, there's the couch and stuff. The door to come in and out is between the couch and dining room table. You walk through the living room side to get to the kitchen. You have to walk through the kitchen to get to the bathroom. New Charlie had put plants in all the windows, spider plants and ferns and some other ones I don't know the name of. He learned a lot about plants in Rahway. It was strange to see him messing around them on Saturday mornings, taking off the dead leaves and giving them water. Sometimes he put these little sticks of plant food in the dirt. Once I even caught him talking to them, telling this sickly-looking fern that it better toughen up if it wanted to make it in the world. This is interesting. New Charlie acts like he doesn't care. But New Charlie is taking care of plants. Does someone that doesn't care about things, do they take care of things like plants? These plants are living. And he's talking to the plants. Plants can be a symbol. And when I think of plants as being a symbol, I might look at this a little bit differently. Sometimes when we're sad and we learn to take care of something living, it can comfort us. Maybe New Charlie is taking care of the plants and that's taking care of himself. Maybe when he's telling the plants to toughen up, he's also telling himself to toughen up. I want to think about that. The sun had come out again, and I watched it bounce off the plants and sprinkle itself over the dining room table. When I closed my eyes to just a sliver, I could see Mama sitting at that table, playing with her eyebrow the way she did when she was worrying, her hair coming loose from its braid. I watched my ghost Mama for a while. She looked peaceful sitting there even if she was worrying. "Hey, Mama," I whispered, "can you make some chicken for dinner tonight?" Mama looked over at me and smiled, a quiet, faraway smile. I blinked, and she wasn't there anymore. "I got $1,000 in my pocket," the guy in the rap video was saying. I leaned back against the sofa and watched him do a sort of swim dance around the girls. After a while, I heard Tyree coming up the stairs. He always whistled the same song. A song our mama used to sing is called "Me and Bobby McGee," about a woman hitchhiking with her boyfriend in Louisiana and how free she felt whenever she played her harmonica. When Tyree sang the words sometimes, it made me want to get a harmonica and get out on the road. Maybe see a sunset. Once Tyree took me to Central Park and we watched the sun go down over the lake. My daddy got hypothermia in. It was real pretty. Pretty and sad. Most times, though, it just sets and then it's night. What you notice is the day and the night, not the sunset in between. On the highway, you probably get all four parts: the sunrise, the day, the sunset, and the night. And I want to stop there and pause for a minute. The sun is also a very big symbol in literature. And a symbol is when one thing really kind of means something else. A sunrise can be when you're born and when you're small, and the day can be your life. And a sunset can be when you start to pass, and the night can be when something has passed. Now, that's not always true, but when I see something like this, it makes me think about it. It makes me think about seasons and how sometimes we don't pay attention to the in-between seasons, and sometimes they're the most important. And I think if I were a hitchhiker and I was hitchhiking, I would appreciate those moments more because the sunrise and the sunset are so much smaller. They're beautiful and they're there for just an instant. And when you miss them, you miss them. And when you catch them, it's amazing. I'm going to scroll up and we're going to start with this. "Yo," Tyree yelled. "Yo, back," I said, holding up my hand without turning my head. I felt Tyree slap it and smiled. "Where's your brother?" I shrugged. Tyree sat down on the couch beside me. He was tall and skinny looking, but not really. When he wasn't wearing a shirt, you could see all his muscles, but with his clothes on, he looked skinny. He used to have locks, but he cut them off when he started working full time, and now his hair is short and neat like an old man's, even though he's only 22. Okay, so we learned something new about Tyree. I'm going to scroll up, oldest brother, and I'm going to stick right here in my notes that he is 22. 22 years old, because I think that's pretty important. He's an adult, but he's a young adult. And now I lost my space and I'm skimming. Here we are, right here. He leaned back against the couch and loosened his tie. I guess Tyree's like our daddy. He works and pays the rent and buys groceries and stuff. After Mama died, the people at the publishing house let him start working full time. Now he's the mailroom manager there and says the work isn't so bad. But once in a while, people blame you for stuff that isn't your fault. Tyree says it's not even worth getting mad about, really. He says that's how it is in the whole world, people always looking for someone else to blame, so he might as well get used to it. Where's your brother, Laf? He asked again. Now, I'm going to stop and notice that Tyree does have a nickname for his brother, but it doesn't sound like a baby nickname like Lala. Laf. That's okay. I definitely prefer Lafayette, though, but nobody asked me. Now, look, do you see how we know this is what Tyree says? He asked again. But here, when it says just left, it doesn't tell us that Lafayette says this. But because of the way it's broken, we can infer that Lafayette is replying because there's no one else in the room. Tyree looked at me, a slow smile coming to his face. He had the best smile in the world. Everybody said so. When he smiled, it made me think about when I used to go to church, how I'd sit there staring at the stained glass window of Jesus with all the kids around him. Jesus was smiling and the kids were smiling and everything seemed peaceful and right. That's what Tyree's smile was like, peaceful and right. Once I heard Miss Williams, who lives downstairs, calling him Saint Tyree, and I heard Tyree laugh and say, "But I ain't dead yet, Miss W." That what he said to tell me? Tyree raised his eyebrows at me. All right, that might be almost a little bit confusing. He went on this explanation about Tyree's smile, but Lafayette says just left, and then down here is where Tyree replies. That what he said to tell me? Tyree raised his eyebrows. So Tyree doesn't believe what Lafayette just said. I shook my head and glued my eyes to the TV. Yeah, right. Tyree rubbed my head and I smiled, taking a swing at his hand and missing. He really did just leave T, like maybe half an hour ago. He say where he was going? Nah. Tyree frowned. Boy, better not be getting out there in any more trouble, that's for sure, and you better not be getting into any trouble either. He tapped the back of my neck. If New Charlie got into trouble again, they'd send him off to someplace worse than Rahway. The social worker said that she'd also have to send me either down south with Aunt Cecile or into foster care. Because if New Charlie got into trouble again, it meant Tyree couldn't handle us. You hear me, Laf? Do I look like I'm getting in trouble, man? Looks can be deceiving, little brother. Well, I'm not. I'm not New Charlie, and I'm not getting into trouble. Just sitting here watching some TV, that's all. A little TV never hurt nobody. Tyree looked at me for a moment, then smiled again. Well, it didn't. Not like watching a video is going to teach me how to hold up a candy store. Hey, we don't need to talk about that, all right? I nodded. Our house was full of stuff we didn't need to talk about it. How come you ain't outside, Laf? First you tell me don't be getting into trouble, then little outside never hurt nobody, Tyree said, mimicking me. I tried not to laugh but couldn't help it. Tyree could always make me laugh. PJ and Smitty's visiting their cousin this weekend, I said. Out in Brooklyn? I nodded. Me and Smitty had been friends forever. Been in the same class since 3rd grade. Him and his little brother PJ lived right down the block. And we all hung out once in a while, but sometimes Smitty'd get to asking questions about Mama dying, stuff I didn't care to talk about. Can you make chicken for dinner, Ty? He jutted his chin toward the kitchen. I read your mind. Took it out the freezer before I went to work this morning. You gonna fry it? Yeah. We sat watching TV for a while. Tyree wasn't really watching, though. He looked like he was thinking deep thoughts. You thinking about Mama? I asked. Tyree shrugged. Not really. Kinda, I guess. Why do you ask? 'Cause I'm always thinking about her. Me too. Me and Tyree stared at the TV, feeling Mama somewhere nearby, and the house in my head chock full of things we weren't allowed to talk about. All right. That was the end of that chapter. Now I'm going to stop and think, and I'm comparing this chapter to the first 2 chapters. And when I think about the first 2 chapters were really getting to know New Charlie. In chapter 3, we really got to know Tyree, and we got a little bit of a picture of what it was like to be Lafayette. Lafayette's at home alone. He's watching TV. He's staying out of trouble. He doesn't want to be around his friends because they ask questions because they're curious. His mom's passed away. That can't be easy. I mean, I'd probably be a little curious too. But he wants his privacy, and that's also very understandable. So we got the picture of new Charlie, we got the picture of what Lafayette's life looks like, and we got a picture of Tyree. Now, have you ever lost someone who you loved a lot? It's a pretty heavy question. At this point in my life, I've lost relationships, but I really haven't lost someone that's passed away. And I know that day's coming, and I know that it's hard, but it hasn't quite come for me yet. And I know it will be very hard when it does. All right. Add a couple more notes. We talked about the sun maybe being like a symbol, and Tyree and Lafayette at home, their day-to-day lives, just getting to know them, and now we're in chapter 4. And what we'll see as the story progresses is we'll probably take fewer notes. The chapters will go faster because in the beginning there's a lot to learn. In the exposition, chapter 4. Ooh, look at that. It's all in bold. Nobody knows where Charlie got the gun. That grabbed my eyeballs right away. Big attention getter, a gun. Definitely has my attention. Nobody knows where Charlie got the gun he used to hold up Poncho's candy store 3 years ago. Now, in the previous chapter, Lafayette said something about robbing a candy store. And now we're finding out that Charlie held up a candy store with a gun. Now we know that Charlie was in Rahway, but we didn't know why. I can make an inference that Charlie went to Rahway because he robbed a candy store with a gun. Even though they haven't told me that yet. Not even Tyree. When the cops showed up at our house that night, Mama and Tyree were sitting at the dining room table. I'm going to add to my notes, Mama was still alive, because that's important. Tyree had just cashed his check from the publishing company where he worked part-time, and Mama was filling out a money order for the rent. Ever since I can remember, Tyree had sat with Mama at the table, the dim light from the floor lamp in the corner. Now, the authors introduced something that grabbed our attention, and now we're invested and we're reading to find out about Charlie and the gun and the robbery. And the author is slowing down the action by painting this whole family picture of what's going on. So Tyree gets this money to help Mama pay the bills. They're being responsible. They're getting the money order. And the author's slowing down things. But he gave us the information that caught our attention first so that we'll keep reading. Ever since I can remember, Tyree sat with Mama at the table, the dim light from the floor lamp in the corner, turning them both a soft golden brown. While Mama filled out the money order and figured out how to pay some of the other bills, Tyree made grocery lists and school supply lists and added and re-added the cost of everything. Some evenings he'd sit clipping coupons for cereals we liked and laundry detergent Mama used. He'd put these in an envelope on top of the refrigerator and take them down when he and Mama sat at the table figuring and refiguring. Now, we talk about how we can figure out who a character is, like on the inside, who they are as a person. And I can take evidence from the text about Mom and Tyree figuring out bills. And I can take that evidence and I can say that they are responsible because they are budgeting their money. They're not relying on credit cards or asking someone else. They're figuring out the bills. This means they're responsible because they're budgeting their money. That's how I know. We're going to add some other stuff to this. They clipped coupons. That's another evidence for responsibility. Okay, that's what they were doing the night the cops knocked on our door, excuse me. My brain did a picture of the policeman kicking the door, but that's not what the words meant. So I caught myself on the words and I went back and fixed it. The cops are knocking on the door. I was sitting in front of the television watching the news because on weeknights Mom would let us watch only 1 hour of regular television and then as much news as we wanted. I'm going to add a row to my table. Mom let them watch 1 hour of TV and all the news. That tells me that education and information is important to Mom. The evidence is she won't let them just watch TV to watch TV. The news is informative and educational. That tells me something about Mom. I didn't really care for watching the news, but it was better than nothing. Charlie had told Mama he was going to an after-school program to get help with his math homework. When he came in at 7 that night, the news was going off and me, Mama, Tyree, and the cops were all waiting. He said he was going to an after-school program, but did he really go to an after-school program? Charlie had been too dumb to get rid of the gun. The cops found it $250 in his pocket. Charlie was 12 and a half, too young for real jail, so they sent him to Rahway Home for Boys. It was one of the few times I'd ever seen Mama cry. I turned and eyed Tyree now. So this is all in the past, guys. He was leaning against the back of the couch with his eyes closed. I turned the TV down a bit more. I'd been 12 for only 3 weeks, but it felt like forever. Every day Tyree found a way to remind me not to end up like new Charlie. I turned and eyed Tyree now. So this is the present. We've come back to the present. We were in the past, we're in the present. One of our clues is new Charlie. But I wasn't new Charlie, I was Lafayette. I had a bit more sense in my head. I could hear kids running up and down outside in the street and some girls playing jump rope. I heard a fire truck go by and a little kid crying for his mama. We live on the 6th floor. If you hang out our window and look way over to the left, you can see Central Park, the very edge of it near the ice skating rink. You can see the tops of the trees. They're turning all different colors now. And you can see lots of cars. If you look to your right, you can see the George Washington Bridge. Early in the morning, you can hear the traffic coming over it. Right across the street's a bunch more buildings like ours. Old, gray and beige buildings with lots of floor and lots of apartment. Years and years and years ago, the buildings used to be fancy, Tyree says, but not anymore. Now they're just buildings filled with people getting by. That's why me and Tyree and new Charlie That's what me and Tyree and New Charlie were. People getting by. Tyree, I whispered. You asleep? Tyree shook his head. I looked down at the remote control, then back up at the television. What's up? Can you tell me something? Maybe, Tyree said sleepily, if I know it. I tried not to think about New Charlie's face when he said the words, when he called me Milagro Killer. Can you tell me about when Mama died? Tyree frowned. See, the author's kind of slowing things down a little bit here. Then slowly opened his eyes. It's Friday night, Lafayette. Go play some ball. I shrugged. Don't feel like it. It's going to be winter soon. Then it'll be too cold to be hanging. I said I don't feel like it. What do you want to know about it? Tyree asked. He sounded tired. After a moment, he put his hand on my knee. I wanted to put my hand over his, but didn't. Just like how come? You know how come. She had diabetes. She went into an insulin shock. But why? Because she didn't have enough insulin in her. Her body just sort of shut down. I bit my bottom lip. Then what happened? Tyree sighed and leaned back against the couch. You found her the next morning, he said. He sounded real patient, like he was talking to a very little kid. She hadn't got up to fix your breakfast. You were in the 4th grade. You always liked oatmeal in the morning. You tried to wake her up to fix you some. Where were you, T? I'd left for school already. I'd just graduated the day before, and I was going to pick up my diploma and say goodbye to people. And New Charlie was at Rahway, right? Tyree nodded. He'd been there for 2 months when Mom died. Once Mama had said to me that time is like a movie. So that's a simile there. Time is like a movie. Is time a movie? No. Now I'm wondering, how is time like a movie? And they're going to explain it to us. Something you watch real close, wanting to catch every line, every action, every moment. Then it passes, and you feel like no time passed at all. She said that when her parents died, time didn't stop the way people always say it does. She said it just became more precise. Every minute, hour, day mattered so much more. So precise means exact. Charlie had been in Rahway for 2 months. There were 4 days between the time I found her and the day we buried her. The morning I found Mama, the clock beside her bed said 7:44. Mama, I'd whispered, you're oversleeping. And now years have gone by, like no time at all. You remember the last thing you said to Mama, T? Tyree smiled. I told her to make sure that when she ironed my green shirt, she didn't put any starch in it. I didn't like starch in that shirt for some reason. You like starch in the other ones, though. Yeah, I do. I twirled the remote around in my hands. I think I told her she was oversleeping, I said. But she didn't hear me. Her hair was hanging down over her face. I moved her hair away, but I didn't call nobody. I should have called somebody. You did, Tyree said. But that was later on. It was too late then. It was too late when you found her, Laf. I put the TV on mute and watched some people dance across the screen. Now, I'm going to pause. I want to respect this moment. And we started this moment with him thinking about how New Charlie called him Milagro Killer. And I realize that New Charlie is blaming Lafayette for his mother's death. And I want to insert a little more thinking here. Milagro killer. Lafayette was with his mom when she went into insulin shock and died. He thought she was sleeping, and he didn't call for help right away. I want to add another column because of this. New Charlie is blaming Elle for their mom's death. No, I don't think New Charlie really thinks Lafayette is to blame. I think New Charlie's just angry. And this is the way your brain should be thinking right here. This next part, the author's doing something called, it's not real comic relief, but when something gets too heavy and too serious, you have to lighten it up a little bit. So the author has redirected that camera to the TV, and we do this ourselves. And we see Lafayette muting the TV and watching the people dance. And this is called, fancy word, so I'm going to write it down. This is called juxtaposition. So position is where something is. When it's juxtaposed, I made that word up. It means it's like coming at a crosswords, or it's different, or it's a contrast. So the contrast here is we have the brothers sat on the couch, and we have the happy people dancing. And we have this contrast. They look so happy dancing, like dancing was the best thing in the world. Now, we're going from the TV back to the couch. I was wearing my Brooklyn shirt, I whispered, and jeans. Mama was wearing her yellow pajamas, the ones with toasters on them. Remember those? Tyree nodded but didn't say anything. Me and Charlie had given her those pajamas for Christmas the year before. They'd been on sale, and me and Charlie couldn't believe we had enough money to buy Mama pajamas with toasters on them. She always burned the toast. She thought we liked it that way. Tyree looked down at his hands and smiled. But how come? Because none of us had ever hurt the heart to tell her we didn't. I'm going to come back up to this character chart. No one ever had the heart to tell Mom they did not like burnt toast. They loved their mom dearly. Some more evidence here is they used money to buy her a gift. PJs. I swallowed and stared at the TV because we loved her too much to hurt her feelings. We didn't say anything for a long time. It was starting to get dark out. When I looked over at Tyree, he was frowning down at the floor. He bent over and picked up a straw wrapper. I told Charlie to sweep. You see him sweeping. I shrugged. He could have done it while I was at school or something. He didn't sweep, Tyree said, voice getting loud. Look this floor. Look at it. It looked fine to me. I'll sweep it. No, I'll sweep it, he said, and got up and went to the kitchen. I have to do everything in this house. Everything. I could hear him in there banging around. Then I heard him sniff and blow his nose. A few minutes later, I could hear him making choking sounds. I went into my room then and closed the door, not wanting to hear Tyree crying, not wanting to hear anything. A long time ago, he'd given me his green shirt. I pulled it out of my drawer and spread it across my pillow, then put my face in it. "Mama," I whispered, "wake up." There's a lot going on here. Tyree's angry about the sweeping. But let me say to you, do you really think it's the sweeping he's angry about? Or do you think maybe he's angry that new Charlie isn't helping? He isn't taking his place in the family, that he isn't being a part of it. Here, sweeping is a symbol. Here, Tyree is feeling like he has to clean up everyone's mess, and there's no one helping him. And he is angry that his parents are gone, and he's angry that Charlie's misbehaving, and he feels like everything is his responsibility. Okay. The end of this chapter, how his mama's death affected the brothers. Use evidence and examples from the text to support your response. Just like I've made these charts in my notes, I would make a cause and effect chart here as well. She's dead. What are the boys doing? How are they dealing with her death? I would use quotes from the text. You guys have been great. I can't wait to see your faces. Please take the time to watch these videos because I've recorded them for you. Of course, if you're hearing this now, you have watched them, so it's a little repetitive. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see your faces.